unfortunately, the mental health industry overvalues emotions and undervalues logic. Now, the people who study it value logic because they went to university and they study, critical thinking and all that stuff. But when you've got someone who's depressed and now someone's saying, well, it's just probably a chemical imbalance. I'm like, well, hang on, where's the fucking critical thinking around that? Right? We know that, and the scientific community know that we're talking now more about the limbic system. We're talking more about hormonal regulation, stuff like that. I can change a person's hormones in 1 second because if I throw a snake in the room and they're scared of snakes, that perception of a snake, even if it's a toy snake, their perception of the snake changes their hormonal states and their ability to think critically in the moment because they drop back into a fear response.
Hey guys, Corey here. Thought I'd just pop on and give a little apology in advance. I had some audio problems with this episode, all fixed for next one, but unfortunately this one did have a few issues on my end, so had to do some mastering on it. Got it the best I could, but just excuse if it's shit quality every now and then through this episode. Hopefully you can still hear me all right, but got to do what you got to do sometimes. Still getting it out regardless. Perfection is the enemy of dreams. All right, my friends, enjoy this episode and we'll see you on the next.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the High Performance Management Podcast, episode 19. Today I'm here with a very special guest, someone who I used to work with, human behavior specialist, Michael Mojo. Thanks for coming on, mate. Really good to have you on.
My pleasure, mate.
Good.
Yeah, good.
Great. I've got so many questions. I think I've learned so much from you over the years, and pretty much what I'm doing now is definitely correlated to me working with you, doing your courses, Thrive Time. So I'm really interested to dive into your perspective of, I guess there's a few things going on in the room. A lot of the new business age that's coming around with people trying to start things online, dealing with like emotional volatilities and getting clear mission, purpose, and values. So I guess we'll get stuck right into there. So people listening that don't know you, if you could like sum it up in like a Uber drive, you're trying to tell the driver what you do, what would you say?
I just help people perform better and get the best out of them. That's pretty much it.
That's great. Nice and simple.
I guess my main like the thing that I'm interested in is human optimization, and I think you've got physical optimization, and then you've also got the mental optimization. A lot of the stuff that I work with is the human behavior element, the mental stuff. Although I do have a background in working in medical centers and stuff like that in the physical performance area, but mental performance is my main strength and getting the best out of people.
That's great. I think that's a really good intro. So like when you say mental performance,
Mhm.
what does it mean to not be performing mentally correctly or
Um,
something like that?
I think there's different levels that you play the game of life at. By the way, I think your mic's still a bit muffly. Um, I don't know if mine's any better, but it might be giving feedback through the speakers or something like that. I'm not sure. Um, but when we're talking about mental performance, I think this is what I've noticed, and this is why I do what I do. I think that there is a subset of individuals in our society who demand more of themselves. Now, there is the majority of society who say, "I want a better life," right? I want to feel better. I want more money. I want to have a better body, be fitter. They say all those things to themselves, but that doesn't mean that they're going to do shit. And most people just don't have the ambition, the drive, all of that stuff, right? So there's a whole mental health industry that I think deals with people who are in those situations where they're just down, depressed, lacking drive, lacking ambition. I don't know, just cruising along in life. Now, I always think in things of balance. So you've got the equilibrium or the balance line, and then you've got, you know, people that are dropping below that. In Australia, there's this mentality of if you drop below the average line, whether it's financially below the average line, mentally below the average line, physically below the average line, health below the average line, there's so much support out there for those people. So if you're just always fucking depressed, you can go out and you can get help, right? And the government will pay for that. They've got Medicare and so on. The problem is, though, is that there is a subset of individuals out there who are extremely driven. These are the game changers out there. These are the people who really want to get the best out of themselves, want to get the best out of life, want to make the most of life. And they're people like myself, there's probably listeners, right? So when I walk into the doctor and I say, I want to optimize my health and my life, the doctor sits there and they're like, what's wrong? And I go, well, fucking nothing wrong. It's just I want to be better. And it's almost like a shock to most doctors that someone actually wants to do better than just shit or sick or unhealthy. Um, and I had a doctor recently who was at one of my business events. I've got one of our clients owns a bunch of medical centers and so on. And there was a doctor there. And the doctor said, I was talking to the doctor and he said, most of our patients are pretty healthy. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, like most of them are pretty good, like they might have diabetes or they might have heart disease or something like that, but overall they're pretty healthy. Like WTF. Those things don't resonate in my head. Like if you've got diabetes, there is a problem there. If you have heart disease, there is a problem there. So even in his head, health to him was just not dying of disease. And unfortunately, that's the medical system, right? But the mental health system is like that. I hear all this trauma, past stuff. You got to go through and crack all these bad negative beliefs. And it's all very down and, everything's shit. But I think that there is a bunch of people out there who just go, you know what, life's not shit, but life's not as great as what it could be. And therefore I want to get that. Now, there are problems with that sort of psychology and that mindset. I've got it. And a lot of our clients have it. That's why they come to me. But what I want to do is I want to know, how do I get the best out of myself? How can I push the absolute fucking limits before my brain disintegrates or before my body falls apart? I mean, you work in the health industry and so on. Like, to be a professional athlete, you're a different type of individual. Now, there's a point where professional athletes will push themselves where they'll disintegrate, but the point just before that is where their absolute greatness is. Now, you can't be sitting there thinking about lifestyle balance if you want to do something great because you're pushing to extremes. Now, most entrepreneurs that I meet who are real entrepreneurs, real business owners, they're pushing to extremes. Like the failure rate of business is 56% of businesses fail in the first 4 years in Australia. I think it's 92% of businesses don't make over $2 million. So it's about 8% of businesses do over $2 million a year in revenue. So if you're in that 8%, you're operating in extremes, which means you put in more time, more effort, more energy. You expect more of yourself. You demand more of yourself. You learn more. You learn faster. You're more adaptable. These are the people that I want to work with, right? And that I do work with. Now, the problem is if you're making more than $2 million a year, most people see you as like, fucking life's sweet. Everything's great. But the truth is it's not, because you're pushing the limits, right? Like a professional athlete. So they still melt down, they burn out, they get stressed out. They're crushing in business, but their intimate relationships might be falling apart. Their kids might not even talk to them because they miss all their footy matches and stuff like that. So what I do is I work with those people in order to keep them performing at their best and making sure that they can live the best life, not just one part of their life that's functioning properly. So I don't do the whole like lifestyle balance, don't push yourself too hard, cruise through life. That's not my community. Our community is called the driven mofos, because these are driven motherfuckers that are out there that want to push the limits. And they want more. Whether it's a great family, whether it's a great business, whether it's great health. Like, I just turned 40. I feel better at 40 than what I did at 21. I got less injuries, less pain. I'm fitter, healthier, stronger. I just, I did only a couple of months ago, I was hardly even training for it, but I just did my heaviest deadlift. And I used to train all the time. I worked in the gym. I was a strength and conditioning coach. And my deadlifts now are stronger, and I'm working more. I'm having probably less sleep. But my health is better. Hey, they're the people that I want to work with. Is like, as you get older, life should get better, not worse. Whereas for most people in our population, life gets worse. They have less money, they're more tired, more burnt out, more stressed, more frustrated, more broken relationships, more anger, more frustration, more stress. So yeah, that's what I mean by mental performance. So people who want to play above that average line.
Yeah, well said. A few things came to mind, and specifically, I agree with you. It's not about balance. It's about I guess harmony is a better word, because some things might be down here, but others are up there, but it's about having them all aligned. That's how I look at it anyway. So you mentioned they're absolutely pushing the limits. And so I face this as well. A few people in my circle are, pushing those limits and, about getting results and not burning out and dying. It isn't a balance, but as you say, since working with, I don't know how many people you've worked with now, what are some of the three categories that you do see overlapping that if one drops, it's a high probability of them burning out or high probability of them not achieving the certain results they want?
Yeah, it's a good question, but just to clarify the question, it's all around. So the question was like, what do I see in people that causes them to crash or to burn out?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So the first thing really is you have to. All humans are unique, but they're unique in a way where there are also very many similarities that show up as patterns of behavior, patterns of thought, patterns of health, and so on. Right. So, like a lot of science that I see is generalization. So you can look at data and very rarely, and you'll see this, in your studies and stuff. How often do you see a study result where it's 100% of participants 100% of the time get the outcome? It doesn't
No.
happen, right?
No.
So even though science would like to create certainty in its scientific approach, which is 100% of the time, 100% results, the truth is that there are patterns, but there are similarities and there's also differences. Humans are very predictable, but they are also very unique in slightly different ways. So my number one value is teaching, learning, and coaching, and my number two is business and wealth creation. So, as someone who runs a business that I would say is reasonably successful, we're definitely in the top 10% of the population and business in the country. Um, I run it in a very unique way because when I'm working with staff, I'm teaching, I'm learning, and I'm coaching because that's a higher value. Um, I do quite well at, meeting the right people, being around the right people. So I'm pretty good at sales, but that's me as a business owner. Other business owners have their own unique skill sets, which are slightly unique to them, but there are also patterns of behavior that are different. Now, coming back to your question about the burnout, the first thing that we have to understand is that every individual has a lane that they are running in. The problem that most people have, and Sigmund Freud, the famous psychiatrist, spoke about this, and the founder of psychoanalytical theory. What he said was that we've got our unique self, which he called the ego. So the original etymology or the word ego means the true self. He said there is the true you, which you're learning about as you go from a younger age to your teenagers and so on. You're starting to learn who you really are. But as a child, you're governed by essentially what he called impulses and instincts, which are your fears and your impulses. So your emotions. So essentially, as a child, your emotions drive your behavior, which is fear and your impulses. Then on the other side, in order to govern that, you have the voices of others who tell you not to do shit, or they encourage you to do things. So he called that the super ego, which really is implanted values. Now, coming back to why people run out of their own lane. Well, first of all, when you're a child, you're running off of impulses and instincts, so you're not intelligent. You're not really that smart. You're just doing shit because it feels right, or it feels good, or it feels bad. But as you start to get a bit older, you realize that sometimes things that feel good are actually bad for you, and some things that are bad for you, or that feel bad for you, are actually really good for you. So that's where you start to develop this logic. You start to develop more of your critical thinking, but also you start to understand that you are different than other people. And so now your values start to dictate behavior. Now that your lane only becomes clear the clearer you are with your values. Outside of that, you're going to be governed and driven by your emotional states, but also because you're driven by your emotions, you'll also be driven by the external voices of other people, which are those who criticize you, those who judge you, those who tell you off. And you're also going to be looking up to other people where you're trying to implant their values onto you because you think that their life is better than yours. So it's those two things. It's our emotional states and the implanted values that pull someone off their track and off their path. So a lot of the time when I meet people that come to some of our events, like our Thrive Time event, which you mentioned before, most people are going, I'm lost. I don't know who I am. It's not that you don't know who you are. It's just that there's a whole bunch of shit that is in the way that's stopping you from seeing it. So the road's there. It's just that you're driving through fog because of the implanted values in your emotions. Um, as you're aware, and a lot of your listeners are probably aware as well, especially if they're sort of well educated in the area of health. You've got the limbic system, which is our emotional system. That's a more primitive system. It's a survival system. So if we're making consistent judgments off of our impulses and our fears or our instincts, when we're running off of that, we're essentially running off of a more primitive system. This is like firing up the old maybe it was probably even before your time, a 1990s computer and expecting to log into the internet. That thing's going to be like slow as shit, running ineffectively, fucking crashing all the time, and you're going to be super frustrated. That's how most people are living because they're using the more primitive system of their brain, which is the emotional system. Unfortunately, the mental health industry overvalues emotions and undervalues logic. Now, the people who study it value logic because they went to university and they study, critical thinking and all that stuff. But when you've got someone who's depressed and now someone's saying, well, it's just probably a chemical imbalance. I'm like, well, hang on, where's the fucking critical thinking around that? Right? We know that, and the scientific community know that we're talking now more about the limbic system. We're talking more about hormonal regulation, stuff like that. I can change a person's hormones in 1 second. Because if I throw a snake in the room and they're scared of snakes, that perception of a snake, even if it's a toy snake, their perception of the snake changes their hormonal states and their ability to think critically in the moment because they drop back into a fear response. So I think as someone who works in human behavior, we need to be asking better questions, being more critical and teaching people how to critically think. Someone throws a toy snake, you sit there and you go, hang on, before I fucking skits out, let's look. It's not moving. Why isn't it moving? Is it dead? Is it a toy snake? And then you realize that why did you have to get emotional and freak out anyway? Imagine if you saw the toy snake, jumped out of the fucking window, cut yourself while you were jumping out of the window, and then you ran down the street in your underwear. You're going to feel pretty stupid to realize it's a toy snake. Now, that metaphor is how most people react in life, right? Is that, something happens, like someone walks down the street, looks at them funny, they get triggered, then they act and react a stupid fucking way, and then that causes problems. You get people who are drinking and someone looks at them funny and they punch someone, and the next second they're in court. That's the same thing, right? It's a toy snake and they've jumped out the window and they've hurt themselves and hurt others and done something stupid. Why? Because they allow their emotions to govern their behavior instead of learning how to think critically. And the more we use our critical thinking, which is our prefrontal cortex, the more evolved part of the brain, the more we can regulate our emotional states. So, something that I say quite a lot. It's not my quote. I heard it from somewhere else. But when emotions are high, intelligence is low. Now, that doesn't mean that the person isn't intelligent. It's saying in the moment that they're emotional, their intelligence drops dramatically. But when their intelligence is high, their emotions are governed. So it doesn't mean that we don't feel shit. I get stressed throughout the day. I get frustrated, but I'm pretty calm these days. I say what I have to say. Like if I'm pissed off, I'll pull someone up on it. But after that, it's like it's done. I just go back to just chilling again. That's critical thinking. That's logical, and that takes a lot of work for most people. For me, it's taken me. I turned 40 this year. It's taken me like 39 years to get on top of that shit properly. But really, it's been probably 6 to 10 years of consistent hard work. And like now I'm just in the habit of, I just do a little bit of work on my mindset every day, just a little bit, just like exercise. You do a little bit every day, right? They're habits. People who do a 12-week challenge and then lose all the weight normally gain it again because it didn't create habits. You want to create mental habits, shit that works for you. Just little tweaks every day versus the like, I need to change everything, which is normally what happens when you're like emotionally imbalanced. So, coming back to what is it that works and what is it that stops people from getting results? The number one is values, because your values govern your behavior. They govern your perceptions, but they also help to regulate your emotional states. When you're in your higher values, you have more eustress, which is spelled EU. stress, eustress. When you're living in lower values or implanted values, you have more distress. So normally people who are emotionally volatile and are running off of their emotions are normally living with a lot of implanted values. And they're getting feedback through their emotional system that you're out of whack. It's like putting the wrong fuel in your car and driving it, and it's fucking coughing and spluttering and shit like that. Most people like that every day because they wake up and they're like, I've got to go to work. We don't got to go to work. You're going to work because you probably like making money. Maybe it's a high value. Maybe financial stability is important. Some people say, well, I've got to provide for my family. You don't got to provide for your family. There are plenty of people out there who don't provide for their family. They're not waking up and saying, I got to. It's just that you're doing it because family is important to you, so you want to look after them. Most people don't think about this because they hang around with other people who think like that, and they think that that's normal. I have people at my events, they're like, yeah, but you've got to work. And I'm like, no, you fucking don't. There are people who woke up this morning. We're doing this podcast 11:30 a.m. in Adelaide time. There are people who are waking up right now. Their first thought is to get out of bed, go to the bathroom, eat last night's leftover pizza, and then smoke a bong. And that's going to be their greatest achievement for the day. They might watch some TV, play some computer games until fucking 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they'll go to bed again, and they'll do the same thing tomorrow. They have no desire to make money. They have no desire to work. So then the question is why? And it's because they don't have the values of wanting to work. Most people, though, live this silliness in their own head where they compare themselves to others, makes them feel insecure. Then they try to justify their behaviors through their insecurity, and I have to do shit, and I need to do it, I must do it. But the truth is you don't have to do fucking anything, especially if you're Australian. Right? We live in the lucky country. You can be the most laziest. Do you mind if I swear on here? I've already dropped a couple of.
Absolutely not. We're in Australia, man.
Cool. So you can be the laziest motherfucker in this country and you will still survive. You'll be okay. You still get health. You can rock up at a hospital. Your fucking liver's blown out because you've been drinking all the time. Your lungs are fucked because you've been smoking, and you still will be okay. You do that shit in some of the third world countries, they just drag you into the gutter and say, enjoy the rest of your life because you've got about 3 minutes until you die. Right?
Yeah.
So the truth is, in Australia, we don't have to do shit. We choose to do it. And most people never consider that they're actually choosing to go to work. They're choosing to go to the gym. They're choosing to look after their family. They're choosing to do this. Why? Because it's important to them. When someone acknowledges that, they become free because they're not now governed by their emotions. Like I have people who say to me all the time, you work too much. And I'm like, I work too much for who? You or me?
Yeah,
it's like
a lot of
work. You know what I mean? Like, so the key thing really is that your values dictate why you do the things that you do. That's number one. So that's the path. The second thing is you've got to have long-term objectives because short-term thinking is normally done in the amygdala. And it's normally reactive or impulsive or fear-driven. So most people I meet are like, I want to be financially free. Why? What does that mean? And they're like, well, so I don't have to work and so I don't have stress. And I'm like, cool, so you're just fear-driven around money. How many wealthy people do you know who are fear-driven by money? It's like zero, right? Because they will think about it, but they're not fear-driven. So you want to be what you label as financially free, but the truth is that you're just you're scared shitless about running out of money, and you might be working a job that you don't like, or you might have made some bad decisions financially. You're impulsive. You're being run by your lower intelligence, which is your emotional system. So if you want to get ahead financially, you've got to use a different system. Why do I like making money? Because I like building shit. I like building businesses. I like helping people. I like, the majority of my money goes back into the company and growing it and hiring staff. And, I think about if I pay them, I'm feeding their family and so on. So when you get really clear about why you do what you do, I don't train because I have to train. I train because I love training. I don't work on my mindset because I have to work on my mindset. I work on my mindset because I love being better. Once you start to think like that, you're in your lane. And then no one else competes because who can compete with you? Like it's you're the best version of yourself. There are going to be a whole heap of people who don't like it, but because you're now living in your executive function or your executive center or your prefrontal cortex in your brain, someone judges you like they're not judging me because of me. They're judging me because I'm not them. That's really what it is. Like they're filtering their values. Someone comes up to me and says, you work too much. They're not criticizing me and my work ethic. They're just saying, if I were you, I would feel burnt out if I had to work that much. To me, I love it. It's like going up to a professional athlete and saying you train too much. They're a fucking athlete. That's what they do. That's why they're professional athletes, because they're good at it, right? It's a thing that they enjoy. So number one is most people burn out because they're outside of their lane. They're not living in their values. They don't have a long-term, consistent, congruent mission that they're trying to achieve. The purpose is essentially why you do what you do. So my purpose in life is to help people perform better. My companies, the companies that I operate, our purpose is to help people perform better and to build businesses that help people perform better. So that's what I do. I do a lot of business coaching and coaching with business owners and stuff. But yeah, that's probably the main thing. The second thing that you're aware of, and I'm sure you've spoken a shitload about it. So you've got values, you've got your emotions that need to be governed. But then the second biggest thing is, your physical body and your physical performance. So you've got your sleep, nutrition, breath, breathing. Most people are shit at breathing because they overeat and it fucks up their diaphragm, and then they can't breathe properly, and then they end up with pain everywhere. Like, so you got to look after your body. I think that's probably the second, and then the third thing is like who you hang around is who you become. Right? It's, if you go back into brain structures and stuff like that, we've got something called mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons are supposedly part of an evolutionary process for us to fit into a tribe. Back in the old days, if your tribe said, on your way, you don't fit in here, you got to go and sleep tonight out in the jungle by yourself. What are your chances of survival? Right? It's pretty low. So your fear response is going to come up, all of that stuff. So that's going to trigger the fear response. Now, what does that have to do with achieving in life? Well, if you don't fit into your group or fit into a group, your fear response may be triggered and you start worrying about what other people think. You start worrying about adapting your behaviors for everybody else. Now, that's okay because you're going to fit into the group. But the question is, now are you running in your lane or are you outside of your lane? Right? Your peer groups need to understand your value structure. Most of my friends are business owners, right?
Yeah.
So when we all sit around, no one goes, man, you work like a 50-hour week. Ooh, you better have some rest, man. You better go have holidays. It's like 50.
Say you have that.
Lazy motherfucker. Like,
Yeah.
so it's normal. And then like every business owner I talk to that's in my friendship circle, it's like, how's business? Well, it's both good and shit because there's always fucking problems. Like we wake up, we solve problems, and we go to bed. That's normal. I speak to most average people who don't run businesses, and they're like, oh man, there's always so many problems. It's like, yeah, cool, that's life. Like, what do you want to do? Just it's part of the game, right? That's it's the game. So
Yeah.
conversations are different. I had a business owner yesterday. I've been working with 2 years now. He's been part of our community. Awesome dude. Runs an engineering company. They build some pretty cool shit. But like we're talking about like heavy metal engineering. So, for 2 years I've been working with him on getting him clear with his values, his mission, getting him on track, and slowly I've watched him grow and grow and grow. About 2 months ago, he sends me a message and he's bought a new car. He's got a new Porsche. Now, 2 years ago, that wasn't him. 2 years ago, he was like, oh, I just drive a Ute and, I don't want to stand out too much and I don't want to be different. Like, I don't want the boys to judge me and stuff. But he wasn't enjoying life. And then also he was limiting himself financially because he wasn't enjoying life. He would go to the pub after work, he'd drink, and, his health wasn't the best. And, he does some martial arts and stuff like that. His relationship was doing okay. Sort of both him and his wife are reasonably successful in their friendship group. 2 years he's been working with me, being part of our community. And, a couple of months ago, he sends me a picture and he's just bought a brand new Porsche. And I was like, fucking sweet. I was the first person he sent it to. And I was like, awesome. Now he's starting to get it. Not that Porsches make any difference. But what he'd realized was that he was living in other people's lanes. He likes living a nice life, but he wasn't living a nice life because he was afraid of what other people would think. Then he said to me, I've given up drinking. And I was like, okay, cool. Like he used to drink every night. And he goes, oh, I still have a beer every now and again, but I just drink like 0 alcohol beer. And he's like, I don't see the point of drinking anymore. Like I used to use it as an escape mechanism. It would deal with my stress and my anxiety. He's like, now I'm enjoying life. I don't have this. So he switched all of that because now what happened was in that 2-year period, he's now figured out he's running in his own lane. But also what's happened now is because his friendship circles changed, I don't not drink. I'm not one of those people who's like, I never drink. I never say I never do anything because I'm a human, right? Like if I want to take drugs, I'll take drugs. I've never taken drugs, but if I wanted to, I could. So I'm not like that. And if I want to drink alcohol, drink alcohol. But the truth is, like, I don't enjoy drinking alcohol. I used to get pissed all the time. So I don't like when people like, I don't drink. Well, when you do, you're gonna feel guilty and you're gonna hate yourself for it. So just I fucking eat chocolate. I enjoy it, but I just have it.
Absolutely.
I feel like it, right? So with him, what's happened is because now he's running in his own lane, he's now got his mindset right. That's now trickled into his body. So he's stopped drinking, he's sleeping better. Now his relationships are better because his relationship with himself's better. Like he's mentally clear, he feels good about himself. So now he has less arguments in his family dynamic. His business is crushing it. They've grown well over 7 figures in the last like couple of years. In the last 2 years, they've been working with us. They were stuck at I think about 600 grand turnover. Now they're about 2 million a year in revenue in just 2 years. And he's not even pushing it. Like if he pushed it, but the third thing that I was speaking about is because now he has a better relationship with himself and stuff around him starting to work. His friendship group and his peers have all started changing, and now he's normal. He rocks up in a Porsche, and everyone's like, "Cool, man, nice car." Like, and they've all got nice cars, but
Mm.
it's not a dick slinging contest like most people think it is. Because most people go, "Oh, you only buy that show off." No, that's what people who are unfulfilled do. People who are fulfilled buy it because they walk out to the car and they're like, "Fuck yeah, man, this used to be a dream and I got it." And it reminds themselves to keep going.
Mm.
I have supercars, not to impress people. You could take my cars. I don't give a fuck, really. Like, you can take my cars. My cars don't determine my value. I like cars, and I like taking people out in my cars because it blows their shit. And it helps me to network. Like, I pick up other friends who are business owners. We go out for coffee and stuff, and they love it. So I enjoy using the car for the purpose of my other values, which is business, wealth creation, um, meeting high quality people, all of that stuff. It helps me to live my values. So it helps me to live to a standard that is my standard in life, not other people. Some people don't give a shit about that stuff, but it's my standard. So they're my top three, mate. Sorry for like just
No, no, it's good.
you know,
It's amazing. Especially, I think it really resonated with me. The seeing, like, in my opinion, personal development is not really something you see like a tangible result instantly with. It's something that once you get, like you're saying, like over time, it just starts to align more. You see things clearly. I think you mentioned earlier about being more balanced. You might have an angry situation in the moment, but it's like you can get instantly over that. And so your emotional volatility is low. But when it does get to that point and it compounds and you start making better decisions and you get better results, and like you said, staying in your lane, and it reduces all of the other areas. That makes a lot of sense. And when you start to see those other areas, I had a question that came up regarding balance, and so obviously we were both into our sciences and things like that. But when you're balanced, how do you find the moment where you have to not be balanced because in order to have drive, you need a comparison point? How do you battle with that? Or is this what happens when you're truly aligned? Do you create like an intrinsic drive? Something I've considered a little bit. So I just want to hear your thoughts.
it's a good question, right? So there's a couple of different parts of it, and my scientific brain is switching on, and my coaching and my teaching brains are like firing now because there's so many different angles, right? Um, we've got to be careful because the great philosophers and the great theologians and stuff like that, they talk about a lot about ideals and how to aim for the ideal. But the ideal is like shooting a bullet and it hitting every time, right? In the exact right place, which is like millimeters distance, but you've got a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
The chance that you're going to hit the same point every time is almost zero. So the truth is that the bullet moves, the wind changes, the direction changes, the lighting changes. So there's always change happening. Now, when I hear people who've done like a lot of study in philosophies or spirituality or stuff like that, they'll say things like, you know, um, um, something that I hear a lot, especially in the spirituality community, and I've studied a lot of this stuff, right? Like I'm part of these communities. I love bouncing around between scientific communities, philosophical communities, and I listen, but I also question. Okay, because I think you need both, right? You need theoretical and you need like tangible stuff. So when you go to spiritual communities, they'll talk about like having inner peace. You have moments of inner peace, but you don't have inner peace. If someone tells you that they have inner peace, I can tell you right now, they either lack self-awareness, they're a fucking fraud, or they're just absolutely delusional. And sometimes in the spiritual community, you'll find all three of them. And sometimes someone has all three of them in their own persona or their personality, right? Um, because the human brain isn't wired for inner peace. But what it does is it says, if we do things well, here's a gift. And that gift is inner peace. So, like, if I live my values and I have a really fulfilling day where I'm pushing hard and I'm challenging myself and I'm overcoming challenges, at nighttime, I sit there, I'm just like, yeah, buddy. And my brain's nice and quiet. But then the next morning I wake up, the business is fucked. There's a customer problem, something's happening. My brain turns to mush straight away. I'm like, holy shit. Then my emotions kick in again and I'm like, oh crap, now I'm out of it. I don't worry about it. Like, I don't sit there, oh man, I need inner peace. I need inner peace. I'm like, cool, I just need to deal with these situations and then, figure it out and we keep working towards stuff. That's why you need to have a long-term mission because it keeps you driven in a direction. The purpose is what fulfills you. But again, you don't live life as a fulfilled person. You have moments of fulfillment. And those moments you have more often, the more personal growth you have if you're doing it properly. So I've never met anyone, and I've met, I've worked with tens of thousands of people now, right? So this isn't just like me guessing or I read it in a book. I've worked with tens of thousands of people. Some of them call themselves spiritual masters and shit like that. I've spoken with them on stages. Man, they don't have inner peace. They're just as fucked up as everyone, right? Something that I teach day one of Thrive Time, you probably heard me say this. I say to everybody, I'm like, look, everyone's fucked up, now get over it. Because when you sit there and you're like, oh man, that guy's like spiritually enlightened, he's got inner peace, and oh man, I wish I was like him. You're setting an unrealistic target that you are never going to meet. When I say to people, right, we're all fucked up, now get over it. Everyone's like, oh, cool. Because if I'm fucked up and they're fucked up and everyone's fucked up, well, we can just get on with life. Now, I'm not saying that to be critical of people. It's because the truth is that we all have problems, we all have stresses, we all have frustrations, and it depends on how hard you're pushing in life. If you're pushing hard, you're moving into new frontiers all the same. I'm scared shitless most weeks. Why? Because I'm pushing into new frontiers. Like I'm making business decisions that I've never made before. I fail more than I win. That's the game though. That's the game that I love and I enjoy it. So I'm not scared of that. I used to be. So it's about setting realistic expectations about life. So going back to philosophy, in philosophical constructs, they'll talk about, or in philosophy, they talk, or spirituality, New Age spirituality, metaphysics, they talk about inner peace, but inner peace is an ideal. It's not something that we experience all the time. Inspiration is something that is momentary. Like it can come and go. I can be inspired right now, but 2 seconds later, I might be uninspired. I might have a different emotion. Now, inspiration is a point of balance, true inspiration, because you're not elated or you're not depressed, you're not up or you're not down. It's just a contentment that you have of doing a task or working towards something. But that can come and go depending on whether your emotions kick in or not. So, I like to be honest with people about this stuff because I think if you set unrealistic expectations, you set yourself up for failure. When you do that, you're going to live in that amygdala where your emotions govern and run you. You're going to be more worried about fitting in and what other people think of you versus doing your own thing. Now,
Sorry, not to interrupt, just while it's in my mind, do you think that that's the main driver for why people are emotionally volatile? It's living in unrealistic or one-sided perceptions of how life is. So that sounds like it almost is, Inspiration is content.
I'll ask you a question, right? How many times do you look at Instagram, see someone with a better body than yours, and you feel fucking awesome about yourself?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Not often.
What you're essentially doing is you look at them you're comparing your values to theirs. You're seeing their benefits and their upsides, but not seeing the downsides of having those values. Every value has an upside and a downside, right? My upside and downside of having a high value of, teaching, learning, coaching is I spend so much time every week. I've spent millions on study, millions, like traveling around the world, learning off of the best people. Like one of my mentors at the moment just sold a company for $1.1 billion. He's not cheap to hire, right? So, other mentors that I've got, they built a business and it's gone from 0 to $70 million in 3 years. So they're not cheap, right? But there's a benefit of having the value sets that I have, but there's also drawbacks. The drawback is I don't spend a lot of time socializing, going out drinking. Like I would rather study and learn. I would rather coach people. I'd rather do podcasts and stuff like that. Having a second highest value of business, the truth is like I spend a lot of time working. Most people are like, what do you do Boxing Day? I work. When I wake up on Christmas Day, I get up. I normally celebrate it with my wife. We'll have a coffee or something. I do a bit of work and then we go out for family functions. I don't do a lot of shit outside of that. And a lot of people are like, man, your life must be boring. Fucking epic. I get to do what I love every day. Why would it? They're basing it on their values. But when I look at most people, like I had a client yesterday and we're talking about this, and he's like, I don't get why, I don't get why, why people think that you need a drink. And I said, well, if you think about it, if you're living outside of your values, your pleasure has to come from alcohol because it's a numbing agent. And so most people like me, I used to, I had low confidence, low self-worth. So I would go out and I would drink before I would go out. So I had confidence. Now for me, my friendship circle was based on drinking. So we'd all be like, man, let's get pissed. And then we'd all fucking drink. And then it's like, mate, that was a wicked night. I couldn't remember it. But why? Because I wasn't truly inspired by what I was doing. I wanted the high highs, but I didn't want the low lows. But the truth is with every drink comes a hangover or something. Like what goes up has to come back down. I love spending money, but with spending money, you have a downside of that is that you run out of money. So, like being able to govern that is important. So, when we look at the comparison of others, social media definitely isn't good for people's brains because you're looking at, let's say I look at someone with a six pack who's ripped and rigged. First of all, they might be taking steroids. Do I want to chuck needles in my ass? Not at the moment. If I got to do TRT later on, maybe, but am I prepared to do that? Not really. Am I prepared to eat chicken, broccoli, and rice and have, calorie controlled meals every fucking day? And the answer is not really. I enjoy going out for lunch with clients. I'm going out for lunch after this with clients. So that's not the lifestyle that I want. So why would I want that lifestyle? It comes with downsides. Now, most people want the outcome, but don't want the work. When you love what you do, you enjoy the work and the outcome is just part of the process. So I enjoy training. I don't sit there and go, man, I have to train or else because when you do that, you're too volatile. Most people who feel like they have to go to the gym, they're doing it either because they have a binge eating problem, they're overeating, they're trying to burn off calories because of their poor food choices. They've let their body get out of control. There's probably lots of different reasons for it. Whereas when you just train because it's what you love training for, it's like I move every day because I just like moving. And weight training's part of it, cardio is part of it. I like it because I get to learn shit every day.
That's true.
So
There's something as well because I know you like Grant Cardone a lot. When we're talking about realistic, Grant hates the word realism. He thinks that realistic is undercutting yourself. What do you think about when setting goals? How do you know when you're not going to limit yourself by the goals you set versus doing something as stupid that will hurt you in terms of taking action and maybe self-sabotaging or something like that?
yeah, when Grant Cardone says like that, we've got to be careful because we're in a world where shit gets taken out of context and it gets run through a frame of reference from the person who's listening. So I 100% agree with Grant, right? Like, don't limit yourself by what you perceive is realistic. But on the other hand, when I look at someone like Grant Cardone or even myself or other people out there, and by the way, this is run through my filter of being someone who I guess has some expertise in human performance and mental performance and health and so on. and probably also business. Um, but when I look at that, I go, okay, what does Grant mean by that? So first of all, Grant Cardone says that the most important thing that anyone should do is get their money under control. What does that tell you his highest value is?
Financial security.
Yeah. Now, if I say that to someone with health as their highest value, can someone who has health as their highest value just work 100-hour work weeks, eat like
Mm.
shit, drive themselves into the ground, or are they going
Uh,
to disintegrate mentally?
yeah, that's a good point. Sure.
So when Grant Cardone's working hard, he feels fulfilled, so he can work hard, and for him, he feels mentally and emotionally stable because he's making money and he's growing his companies. If you give that same value and you implant that same value onto someone with a high value of health, they're going to mentally destruct. If you take a mum and say, get your finances under control, you need to have a job, you need to work hard. I watch this in network marketing all the time. Like all these women go in there, they get promised $1 million lifestyle, top lifestyle. Fucking 1% of them probably do well. And I don't know the exact statistics, but the rest of them just fuck around and fluff around and they make a little bit of cash. And, they enjoy the catch ups and the networking and they enjoy telling people that they have a business. But the truth is that most of them aren't good business owners,
Mm.
right? They're doing it because they like the product, they like the networks, they like learning. So they get that supported in there and they like making a little bit of money. That's the truth. But that's their value set, right? Combined together in a product or a service. But 99% of the world, 99.999% of the world are never even going to get close to what Grant Cardone's accomplished because his high value, his highest value. If you watch Undercover Billionaire, he's
Yeah.
like away from his family for what was it, like a month or whatever it was, 90 days or whatever. He's grinding, he's sleeping on the floor. Like most people give up in 2 days if they had to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So when he's talking about realistic goals, or unrealistic goals, he's talking about them in the era of wealth creation, which is what drives him. So he's essentially talking about a mission. But Grant is also very good at breaking down goals into smaller goals. So he will talk about this quite a lot, where he's like, you got to break them down. What most people say is they're like, I want to have a $10 million business. And I'm like, all right, cool. So what does the first year look like? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, cool. So let's say we're going to make $1 million in the first year. And let's say you've made 80 grand for the last 2 years. That's a big growth. That's a lot of growth. Now, it's not that you can't do it. It's just that the learning has to happen. And so in 12 months, you have to learn how to generate $1 million. It's not the fact of generating $1 million, because if I gave you $1 million, you'd probably lose it if you're used to having 80 grand. Why? Because you don't have the skill sets and the knowledge.
Yeah.
It's that fucking simple. So it's skill acquisition that people normally need. But the problem is most people don't focus on the skill acquisition, they focus on the outcome. So there's all these I get all these fucking 15-year-olds and shit, and they're like, man, how do you make all this money? And I want to be financially free. I'm like, dude, you're 15, learn how to work. Learn how to learn. That's the skill that you need to acquire. In my 20s, all I did was fucking work and learn. I didn't work to make money. I worked to learn. But by the age of 30, when I turned 30, I think the first year I made my first $1 million in business was just after 30. I don't think it was quite 31. So I was, in that 30 to 31. After that, I've not made less than $1 million a year. Right. And the business opportunities get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now for the last 10 years, I'm just turned 40. The last 10 years, all I've focused on is acquiring business knowledge, having the right people around me, figuring out how to hire, fire, staff management, because I was shit at all that stuff, man. It used to work for me. I was shit at management. I was shit at leadership. I had no idea what I was doing in business. I could make money, right? I was a hard worker. And I'm still a hard worker. I'm good with human behavior, but I wasn't good at business, right? And I have this conversation every week, right? I get a plumber who comes to me and they're like, man, I got all these fucking stuff and everyone's an idiot and people jerks. And I'm like, right. So you went from being a good plumber, right? You're a good plumber. And they're like, yeah. And I said, you make good money plumbing, right? Yeah. And they're like, how much do you make? 250 grand a year. Okay, cool. Now you're a business owner and you got staff. How good are you as a business owner? How much money? You spend 4 years to do an apprenticeship to get good at plumbing. How many years have you spent learning about business? Oh, yeah. Well, why do you think you're shit? Because you don't go from being a good plumber to being a good business owner. You have to acquire those skills. You've got to acquire leadership, management, marketing, sales. There is so much to learn. And the reason why most trade-based businesses are really shit and most trade-based business owners are stressed out is because they put in zero energy and zero investment into understanding business, which includes sales, marketing, branding, leadership, management, operations. They just don't do it. But they spend 4 years learning how to fucking, connect pipes. Now, I mean, it's more complicated. There's probably going to be a plumber here that's going to send me a message like, man, we do more than that. I get it. But that's you're essentially learning plumbing in business as a business owner. You've got to learn marketing, sales, branding, all that shit, management, leadership. Like you're always learning. It's like a 40 to 50-year growth process, at least.
Right. So let's say plan skill acquisition versus outcome, changing where the focus goes.
Yep.
Sort of looking at how you're going to get it, break it down to small steps. Then probably the better question is, what skill do I need to achieve that action?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Skills and life. I think it's interesting as well when you're talking about when you first turned 30. I only know this because I've known you for a few years now, but there was a key moment for you. I think you said you wanted to be a millionaire by 30 and it hadn't happened, or 29 or something like that. I just want to hear that story again about you were quite successful in PT. We were a heavy diesel mechanic as well. Is that right?
Yep.
And then you've always been kind of driven by that. And then you got to this, like, you had this goal in your head and maybe you didn't have the right actions to get there, or you hadn't learned the right skills. Now that we're talking about that, how did you deal with that? Because I know it was quite a big blow. And then where was that turning point into making that first million?
Yeah. So when I turned, so when I was 21, I think it was, I've got to go back and get these exact dates, but I think when I was 21, I resigned as a diesel mechanic. I just finished, I didn't fully finish my apprenticeship because I got the paperwork which said I'd completed, what I needed to, but I just never followed through with it because I was like, I'm never fucking doing this job again. So my boss signed it all off, but it's sitting around somewhere. I never like fully completed it. But the day I got that bit of paperwork signed to say you're finished, I quit. I just never went back. And so the thing that I loved was being in the gym. It was the only place that made me feel confident. As a kid, you probably can't see it. My hair's shit. Now I got a haircut later this afternoon, but I got, as a kid, I had bright red hair, freckles. I was chubby. In grade 5 swimming class, I was the only kid who wore a t-shirt at the aquatic center, for swimming carnival. And, so I had body image issues when I was real young. But I started training. Dad had a little gym at home. He used to play football and cricket. He was quite good at those two things. So he would train. I'd just go and join him. And I found my love for that. And I remember at like 13 or 14, I remember reading books on I remember it was like this old shitty like 1960s book or whatever. And I remember reading about like the latimus dorsi, and I thought it was like the coolest shit. Like how the glutes fire and their activation and all of that stuff. So I've always been interested in that. Like last night I was just sitting on the couch. I just got some genetic testing done. And I've just been reading about my genes and trying to understand it and analyze it. So, I left the diesel mechanic field, went into personal training, just walked into the gym and said, look, I'll do anything. I'll clean toilets. Like, just let me work here. They gave me a job, started working on the front counter. Within a couple of months, I knew everyone who came to the gym. I used to train there quite a lot. So I would always help people when I was up there. And eventually the boss came to me and he said, look, if you don't tell anyone you're not qualified, just start. Now we're talking like 20 years ago now. So, it's a fair while ago. Probably can't get away with that now with insurance and shit. But I started training and I just loved it. And then I kept studying. I studied kinesiology through the Czech Institute, studied nutrition. And I just wanted to keep helping people. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm a dietitian, never went to university. That's not my place. I don't like being told how to think. I like having my thoughts stimulated, but I don't like being told that this has to be the way that it is. So, university sort of, I've challenged me mentally a little bit. But eventually did really well in PT. I got poached to work in a medical center, worked there for a couple of years. And it was there where I realized that everyone knows what to do. They just don't do it because of their head. And that's how I got into this stuff. So at that time, I was making about, I think it was about, my last year was like 265,000 I made as a personal trainer. And we're talking like, 15 years ago. Hang on, it was 11 years ago now. So yeah, about 11 years ago. So I was I was making good coin. I'm saying it was still good coin even today's standards, but back then it was like, I could know I made that as a PT. Weren't online coaches and shit like that, like there are now. So did that, jumped out, started our business doing health and running like health events and combining mindset. And my goal was to be a millionaire by the age of 30. I guess I've always been driven by money. Like, it's been a high value ever since I was a young kid. Probably because growing up, my dad had 2 jobs. My mum had me when she was 17. We never had money. Like, we were scrounging on the bones of our ass. So I think growing up, like playing basketball and not having, Jordans and Reeboks like the other kids, and having like some cheap Kmart shoes or whatever, probably drove me. So I got my first job when I was 13. And even when I was younger than that, I used to go on, dad and all his friends would sit around and get drunk on the weekends. And I'd walk around to everyone on Sunday morning when they were all hungover and shit on camping trips. And I would go up and ask for everyone for gold coin donations so I would wash the dishes, and I make like $30. Um, so even back then I was like trying to figure out how to make money and stuff like that. But yeah, I got to the age of 30, nothing really happened. Business hadn't taken off. I was like super depressed. My mum and my now wife came to me and was like, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I was like, just leave me the fuck alone. I don't want to really do anything. They wanted me to celebrate, but I didn't really have anything to celebrate. Yeah, that was my 30th. And yeah, I think after that, things just started clicking in place. I think sometimes you go through these situations in life where you just have to think differently. And so that situation there made me think about how much time I was wasting every day on social media, how much time I was worried about what other people would think. I remember shooting my first YouTube video on, I reckon I shot it about 20 times and just deleted it, deleted it over like a month period. I'd film them and then sit on it, and then I'd delete it and then film it again, just because I was scared about putting it up and what people would think, and thinking that it wasn't good enough. Um, but yeah, I just got to a point and I was like, fuck, my skill gap isn't my knowledge. And I think this is the ignorance that most people have, and the gap that most people have in their life, right? Is that they're good at one or two things, but they don't see what the gap is in the next evolution of themselves. And so, like, you look at most people who run a business, they run a business because they're good at a skill, but they're not good at
Mm.
running a business, or they're not good at the other skills that the business needs to grow. And so I guess I had some good self-awareness back then, where I was like, you know what, shit, my business isn't where I need it to be. The thing that I need to learn is I need to learn sales. I need to learn marketing. And so I just immersed myself in sales and marketing for like 2, 3 years. And then, pretty quickly, once I started learning sales and marketing, we kicked it over that $1 million mark. But I still do most of the sales now in the company. And, I think I'm pretty good at it. I get to teach sales to other people, because it's all mindset, right? People go and learn sales, but you're not really, there is sales strategy. But if you're a shit communicator and you don't understand people, you're still going to be crap at sales.
Yeah.
You sound like a robot because you've got a script. Um, so it's really, sales is human behavior. Wealth generation is human behavior. It's like 90% human behavior, 10% strategy. Most people fucking send me messages and they're like, what shares should I invest in? I'm like, why does it matter? You're going to blow the cash anyway. You're going to do something stupid. So just, like, don't worry about it. It's the wrong question, right? It's like, how do I build the skill set of how do I build a wealth psychology so that when I make money, I can hold on to it, and then I can reinvest it and make more money. And then from there, you're building wealthy habits. So, I just studied sales, marketing, and then kept figuring out the gaps. Like, I've invested since I was young, reasonably young anyway, but didn't hold on to money well. So I had to learn how to structure money better. I've just always tried to figure out what the next gap is. Now my gap is building the next stage of the Mojo Human Performance Institute empire, and we've got Mojo Business Multiplier now. And so we're just starting to build that out, hence the new coaches and stuff like that. I know the gaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that leads us exactly to the end. What's the future of Mojo Human Performance Institute?
Um,
Look, your 10x.
yeah. So, um, at the moment, it's a good question, because I'm just trying to figure that out. So my new mentor's coming in. He's like, right, I need clarity on, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. What does it look like? And I've got a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I'm clear with what the end result looks like. It's just the stages are a bit harder. I'm trying to clarify them. Um, so really, I want to create. I'm on the journey right now to creating, uh, I guess, health clinics. So health clinics are on the goals list. So just bring in some of the newest information about longevity and things like that. I think there's a massive gap in the market in Australia. TRT is pretty hard to get for guys, which I find really fucking weird because women can get hormone treatments easy from doctors, but guys can't. Which is just I don't get it. But policy has to change. We're so far. Australia is so conservative, and we're so far behind the US, and most Australians, even though we live in the lucky country, which is good because everyone gets opportunity here in most cases. Um, you can come from a third world country and do really well here, probably better than most Australians because you're more driven and you work harder and shit like that. And you're probably more adaptable and all that. America's the same, but I find that Australians are very risk adverse and are very adverse to change and don't like people doing too much better than we don't like people who go big. We like people who just sort of keep things plain and mundane. Um, which it's good if you want to be average, but if you don't want to be average and you want to make change, it's fucking hard, right? And then Australians worry about the most insignificant shit and make it significant. Like we worry about kid runs out in front of a car, gets hit by a car, so now they want to change all the speed limits across the country because it's fucking every driver's fault. Like we go to the lowest common denominator here. Whereas America tend to push harder and like the Australian dream is to own a home. The American dream is to go big and do something cool with your life. So it's just a different culture. But I think Australia's far behind the health situation with hormone treatment, genetics. Um, our good scientists tend to go to America because they're more open to change. So I want to start pushing that a little bit and start opening up clinics that can do that sort of stuff. There's some other stuff I won't go into it too much, but there's some other stuff I'm looking into as well. So that's number one. They will be like, again around human performance. Like I want to optimize people. Then you've also got, I've been getting a lot of coaches coming to me wanting to learn how I help people and how I drive people. I think there's a lot of coaching out there that is the usual stuff, right? There's millions of coaches out there, same as the PT industry back in the day. But the good coaches that actually drive performance, there's very few, and that's because I think most are more worried about what people think about them, and most of them have their own traumas that they're working through. And the coaching industry goes through fads like breathwork's a fad at the moment. It's got some good stuff out there, but it seems to be trendy. Yeah, or breathing ice baths, all that stuff tends to be trendy. It's been around for thousands of years. It's just become a trend. But look, I would love to be able to create some more coaching courses using the methodologies that actually work, that push people to really break their own limitations and to play life a lot bigger. Our events, I think, will keep growing as well. Our business events, which one of our brands is Mojo Business Multiplier. That's been going really good. Like, we've added billions of dollars in value in companies just over the last 3 years that it's been running. So, we have a lot of growth in there. We got all business owners from like $300,000 plus in that group. But it's pretty awesome. Like I get to bring in some pretty wild people in there that most people don't get access to, but they're clients I've coached. So I bring them in and they talk about how they grow businesses and teams. So yeah, mate, I'm just building the empire, just chipping away at it. Like I'm just enjoying the process of just working towards stuff.
That's awesome. I think, it just sounds like I've got a lot of inspiration. It's funny, we think very similar. That's really good. I really appreciate all the conversations we've had about, drive, being driven by your fears and impulses, emotions being high equals intelligence low, realism, ideals, staying in our lanes. I think we had a lot of better nuggets in there, which I'll chop up and let everyone could see. But I really appreciate you coming on today. Did you have any final parting words for anyone listening?
Yeah, I do. This is something that I say and it's a bit morbid, but fuck it. I'm going to go for it. Look, this is what I say to all of my clients and in all of my events. You're going to die one day and no one's going to give a shit. So it's your time here while you're here on this earth to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. And you might as well enjoy the process of living it. So, I think that until someone realizes they're going to die and no one cares, like literally the queen died, what, 12 months ago. fucking 99.999999% of the planet has not even thought about her since she died. So the chances that, someone's going to think about you and what you've done, or, you know, whatever mistakes you've made, is pretty much going to be zero. And I think most people hold themselves back in life because they're afraid of making mistakes and they're afraid of people judging them. But the truth is, if someone's going to think about the fuck up that you made yesterday, they're going to think about it today and maybe a little bit of tomorrow. And then by the end of the week, they're going to forget about it and they're going to go on with their life and they're going to worry about the next person that they're going to blame, or, whatever. To be honest, no one honestly gives a fuck about what you do. Like, no one really gives a fuck about what I do. They do if it helps them. But outside of that, no one cares. So the best thing that you can do, I think, as an individual, is to get clear of what matters to you and what's important and live that life on your terms, not try to live in other people's lanes, trying to be something that you're not, suffering each and every day as you try to trudge through life, through your emotional reactions, and, getting all upset with yourself because you're frustrated because you hope that the future is going to be different. The truth is, the future never changes. Everything just expands and scales. So if you're stressed today, everything in the future is just going to get worse. If you're anxious today, the future is going to get worse. That everything changes the moment that you change. And so when you wake up and you say, I don't want to fucking be stressed today, like, what's the point? You just changed. Now your future is going to be different. So everything we do is moments and decisions. If you make better decisions, you have a better life. So it all really comes down to the decisions that we make on a daily basis. And life's tough. Like, it's not supposed to be easy, right? Growth happens through pressure and through stress. So we're going to have pressure, we're going to have stress, and we're forced to grow because everything in nature grows or dies. So now knowing that most people don't give a shit, why don't you find something that's purposeful to you, that's meaningful to you, that you can grow in, that you feel fulfilled in? Do that every day and your life is going to be absolutely fucking schmick. And yeah, you're going to have challenges and you're going to have emotional states and all that stuff, but that's what makes life fun. It's like a discovery. It's a game, right? When the shit hits the fan, it's a game. Figure out what went wrong, figure out how you can win again, get back on track and keep going. And by the end of it, you enjoy the game, right? But I think that's the key to life, is enjoying the game of life in whatever area that you want to play in, whether it's family. Yeah, you're going to have fucking problems, but that's the game. So enjoy your family. If you're going to own a business, it's going to be stressful. So enjoy the game. You want to improve your health. You're going to have heaps of fucking challenges. It's a game. Enjoy it. And then life becomes enjoyable. And then you're going to meet a bunch of other cool people as well who are going to be there for a little bit. And then they're going to go off and do their own thing. And they're not attached to you. They owe you nothing. You owe them nothing. You're on your path. They're on their path. You'll help each other out when you can, if you both get something out of it. If not, just do your thing.
That's great. Mic drop. Good ending. I agree. Where can everyone find you, Michael?
Most of my social media is Michael Mojo 00 on most platforms. On Instagram, you just got to switch the ones and the zeros because some asshole hacked it, and we just had to change the zeros because I couldn't get back my thread. But Michael Mojo 00. YouTube, we drop a heap of free trainings on there for business and mental and emotional stuff, coaching, all of that. So my YouTube channel is Michael Mojo on YouTube. The website is themojomaster.com.au or mojohumanperformance.com. If you just search my name, Michael Mojo or Michael Johnson, in brackets Mojo, my stuff will come up. Probably some other stuff as well. It's got to be some hate out there somewhere. I've helped enough people that I got to be now pissing off people. So there's probably some trash out there as well. But yeah, you'll find me on there.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thanks for coming on today. It's been awesome.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. Thanks, mate.